venture across the border to beautiful California, where we meet and greet the amazing Amit Lau, founder of MyOhana, which we are going to explore very shortly. But before we get to what promises to be an enthralling discussion, including family separation across international borders, here's some information about us. First off, my name is Dipchand Ramcharitar. I'm the Outreach and Development Director at Voice of Men 360. Voice of Men 360 is a non-profit organization based in London, Ontario, Canada, and has been around for roughly 6 years. We primarily advocate for men and boys, though we reach out to other demographics such as the indigenous community and communities rather. We are associated with International Men's Day, who operate in a similar capacity and has been doing so for more than 25 years in over 95 countries. A massive thank you for all of us out there, the viewing audience, as we warmly welcome Amit, writer, teacher, international family advocate. What makes this even more interesting is his personal experience with family separation, abduction, and the infinite complexities and difficulties endured in the process. Welcome to Voice of Men 360's Open Up, Amit. Why don't you start off by briefly introducing yourself? Amit, the floor is yours.
Hi, thanks for having me, and thanks for Voice of Men 360 for putting on this series. It's an honor to be here, and I'm looking forward to a conversation. So my name's Amit Lau, and I'm the founder.
Can you give us a little bit of background of who you are?
Sorry? Can you repeat? I didn't hear you.
Sivam, are we having some technical difficulty?
Hello? Okay.
Sorry, Amit, there seem to be some technical difficulties. So just hang on while Sivam resolve the issue. We apologize.
Can you guys hear me?
I
Yeah,
can.
no worries. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Cool. Yeah, I'm not sure what happened. So thanks for having me on the show. Yeah, so my name's Amit Lau, and I'm the founder of MyOhana, and it's a technology company related to family continuity. And I was separated from my children almost 10 years ago. And then through that process and journey, I've tried to work on not only healing myself, but others going through similar measures, but also just understand family literally, and how to keep families more connected, how to reunite and restore families. And it's become kind of a life quest of mine. In addition to that, I also teach. I teach children. I teach elementary school and do some tutoring on the side. And I also am a writer, and I've worked on a couple articles related to the topics that we might be discussing today. And I'm working on a manuscript about the story.
Area that you've mentioned, it's not something that is much talked about, and obviously much needed to be talked about. So we certainly appreciate your presence here today and the opportunity for you to sort of explore this topic as much as possible. Speaking of which, let's go to the MyOhana and where are you going, Appa? That came out of your own experience. What was the moment you decided, look, I'm going to build something so that other families don't go through this?
Oh, yeah, thanks. I think part of it was that I had a very asymmetrical situation when I lost my children. I was in another jurisdiction in India, and I didn't have the resources or the contacts to actually make progress, although I tried several times, and I tried to work with the US government, and I went through this whole process. After doing that for a while, I got really involved in activism and learning not only how to heal myself, but work with others to try to move forward with these issues, particularly related to parental alienation and international parental abduction. And so in that process, I started seeing a lot of gaps. And the entrepreneur in me was like, maybe there's an opportunity here for restoration and creating tools that can help people.
So, what would you say was the hardest about turning pain into a product and a mission?
I think that there's a certain level of re-traumatization that happens when you get involved in, whether it's activism or working on a mission related to something that causes you a huge amount of grief. And so that's kind of, the two sides of the coin. On one hand, the grief is what drives you. On the other hand, it also keeps the wound, a little bit going, you could say. So yeah, I think over time, as you iterate over and over, you tell the story more, you have a better understanding, you start feeling yourself heal, it gets a lot easier. But there's definitely, a proportion of your pain and motivation that vary across the journey.
Yeah, well, it's commendable that you took that route because, and I'm not saying this as a criticism, but as a matter of a routine. A lot of people can't handle the trauma beyond the trauma itself. And so to do something like this, turn it around, the pain into something that other people can benefit from is certainly something to be admired and appreciated. For example, I think the person who founded MAD, that organization that deal with drunk drivers and whatnot, I think their child was killed by a drunk driver, and that's what the person started off this organization about. So things like that, and I think the guy John Walsh, his son, died when he came out with this FBI show, where he would have these fugitives on screen so people can identify them, and they were able to capture some of them that way. So these are examples, and yours obviously is another example of that, where people can turn such tragic misfortune into something where people experiencing something similar can benefit as well. So that is certainly something that is commendable and something that other people can take some sort of inspiration from. So kudos to you for that. When it comes to men, we all know men generally, they have a hard time, especially on the mental side, in trying to, to bring their problems to the forefront. And there's also this issue of them having to fight certain legal systems and different issues of that nature in the way. So for a lot of men, fighting for your kids, and that's fighting for their own kids rather, means courts, consulates, treaties, paperwork, you name it. Can you walk us through what the machinery really is and what an ordinary person can realistically do inside it?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for that question. It's an important one. I think from the beginning, it's a tough question because the machinery is purposefully vague. It's purposefully meant because it's intertwined with the legal system, it immediately gets monetized. And because of that,
Sorry? Can I interrupt you for a second? When you say purposely, can you elaborate a little more?
Yeah, sure. So basically, there's a system that has been created essentially in the legal system when families are separated that is adversarial. And by being adversarial, essentially, it's like if we're going to split up, we're going to have to essentially attack each other the most to see who is the more fit parent or who deserves the most resources. And then preemptively, someone might, exaggerate, and that exaggeration might turn into false allegations. And people preemptively do this, often are trained by their lawyers to do this, and then the system responds accordingly. And so because of that, the number one emotion that people feel, I've seen, is shock. They just can't believe that this is happening. They didn't know that it was this bad. They didn't realize it was going to take this long and it would be this ugly and it would cost this much. And so many people and resources they thought they would have available might disappear.
Yeah, to take the courts, for example, are the judges in your knowledge, are they trained beyond the law itself to deal with sensitive issues like family matters and all, like in terms of husband, wife, children, other family members and whatnot? Or are they basing their decision for custody and support and whatever strictly on the law as they know it.
Thanks for that. No, I think that, of course, the law is meant to be flexible and there's always discretion. So that judicial discretion allows them to interpret the law. And so that's really the whole game. Now, I would speak to judges in the sense that when it comes to their knowledge and experience, we should give them the benefit of the doubt because they have so much exposure and so much experience constantly churning through these cases. And what I've seen is that they often are having to be a part of the different trends that are occurring. And they're also, witnessing and experiencing that on an individual level. Certainly, just like everybody, judges have different types of temperaments, personalities, things like that. I think, though, that if you are wise, you should look into whoever is your judge and understand, what their history and cases have been, because there are trends that emerge from that naturally. I believe that they do try to go for the law as much as they can, and seeing so many cases constantly, they would have a general idea of, the family system, but they don't really see what happens afterwards. They might see it in the form of an appeal.
Right.
It's all over. No one's really coming back and giving them a report, and they don't really have the bandwidth for that. And so the follow-up, when it comes to reunification or even damage assessment and reduction and those types of things, they're not really that involved in it. And to the point of everybody else, like the lawyers and the other people involved, they certainly don't have training when it comes to things like parental alienation, etc. I mean, there are some that do, who are usually trying to help people with parental alienation specifically, but unless the lawyers have specific training in parental alienation, which I've seen is very rare, they often don't have that. Or if it's other things related to family court, they stick within the parameters of their arena. And
right. So would you say that, based on what you're saying there, and the fact that judges don't have, any information going forward after the decision is made, would you think that some sort of specialized training in the area of parental alienation and family support and whatnot is something that might help a judge make a better decision? I'm not saying that decision is necessarily wrong, but to make a more informed decision, rather, if they have this knowledge ahead of time.
Yeah, I think that learning more about parental alienation and the harm that is caused to children when they are separated is something that everybody involved in the process should be initiated in, starting with when you decide to get married.
Right.
It actually starts with you.
That's a very good point.
So I think that, that's what we really need to do. And that's why we have these awareness campaigns and things like that. And
actually, I was listening to a divorce lawyer speaking recently, and he said there's all these boundaries, all these rules and regulations for every other thing in life except when you're getting married, and which is one of the most important legal things you can ever do. And so you have no clue what you're getting into in terms of the law until you end up in court, and then it's too late. So, it's funny that that's how society is set up, but that's a good point. People should know from a legal aspect what marriage is all about, obviously, in addition to what you need, the other components that fit into getting married. But knowing the law certainly helps. One of the things that we find I've mentioned this a few moments ago with men is, why do they go silent? In these situations, so many men just simply disappear. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, when I was growing up, I used to hear this myth of the father that went to the convenience store for a pack of cigarettes and never came back. And that was a perpetuation that happened. And in reality, I've almost never heard of that story. It's almost never where a father's like promising and then disappears. Instead, what happened is they often just got so beat up by the system that they either dropped out because they ran out of finances, or emotionally they couldn't take it anymore, or they made a bad decision early on at the advice of somebody that's now led to, some sort of possibly permanent disconnection from their children that they're haunted by. And So yeah, when it sorry, I lost track for a moment.
That's okay. Yeah. So while we're on the topic,
why they go silent? Sorry, right? Yeah. So so they go silent because first off, because it's such an uphill battle, and secondly, it's very isolating. You know, you're basically like a nuclear reactor after you first get false allegations and you've lost your family. You know,
right?
It's like Chernobyl around you for a while.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
And so if you start yelling and screaming about it, that just becomes evidence that you're unstable and angry. So you get smart and you go quiet.
Yeah. I've heard this from another discussion I was part of, where this lawyer was saying that one of the reasons men don't seem to go further in courts is because the lawyers advise them, and again, I don't know how true this is, that there is no point to this. It's going to cost you thousands and thousands of dollars. So why don't you just throw in the towel and take what you get as part of the settlement? And usually it's a raw deal for men. And so that's another issue that, if that is true, that they obviously have to contend with. Now, what does all this silence mean? I mean, what does it cost the men, the kids, and the people around them?
Well, I think that there was a study that just came out a few years ago that said basically alienated parents on average had a 50% suicidal ideation in the last year.
Wow.
So the number one thing is this kills people. That's the biggest harm that it does. And if you kill a family member, a parent, then you've already destroyed the family beyond repair. That child will never get a chance to have half of who they were, not even an opportunity for the restoration. And I think that's the most brutal part of it. The multiplying effect towards, self-harm during that time is at its maximum, oftentimes in the male experience. You've just lost the love of your life. You've lost your family and your children. We just discussed how isolating it can be. And there's the support is much less for men as well. And that combination of factors often leads, unfortunately, to that. And so, yeah.
And some, and this is obviously unfair, some might even carry the burden of guilt, like they feel responsible for the dad committing this act, and that's unfair to the child or the other family members that survive, but again, it's a horrendous thing to experience, when you go to court and you get a raw deal in terms of some sort of custody battle, or costs involved and whatnot. So it's some people definitely, on top of everything else that they're experiencing in life, can't just seem to handle it, and they choose this what they consider to be the only way out, unfortunately. So now, speaking of which, we should look at what the system gets wrong. Like, what happens when a parent separates from their child, and this is across borders, and why do the systems meant to help mostly fail them?
Well, of course, the minute a child loses access to a parent, they're losing access to a portion of their identity and their family. And what studies have shown is that this is catastrophic in terms of their developmental outcomes, both cognitively, psychologically, emotionally. It leads to higher pregnancy rates, higher drug use, lower graduation rates, much higher incarceration. So it's catastrophic to the child. And, it gets worse the longer the gap is usually. The reason why this even exists most of the time is on the basis of it's a safety concern. And that's where it intersects with false allegations, because it's called essentially the silver bullet. And that's if you make a false allegation against a parent, you can have them immediately removed with a restraining order, start creating a gap of time, and then litigate that time to expand. Once that time is expanded, that the bond has weakened so much, then use that example of the deterioration of the bond to justify further isolation. And that's kind of the downward spiral that often happens. And this is because in society, we believe in protection, and especially protection of women. And that's right. It should be that way because, you know, for many reasons, women can be compromised physically faster. But the result of that is it's misused at such a degree that it tears apart families and essentially feeds a legal system that benefits greatly from it in terms of billable hours.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Again, to reiterate, we at Voice of Men 360 support women, in every possible way that we think is beneficial to them and society as a large. But this is not a zero-sum game. It's not helping one parent at the expense of the other. So, like everybody can benefit from decisions made in the courts. That's, as they put it in the courts, and which has been held on shaky ground, is in the best interest of the child. And is that really the case when decisions are made in a matter relating to custody and things of that nature? So it's something that need a lot of people of the opinion that needs to be redressed and reassessed. And again, it comes back to the issue of having knowledge about what happens when you make a decision in the courts, how it impacts the family down the road and things like that. So it's a sort of a complex issue, and it takes a lot to put all these things together. And again, with that famous or infamous quote, "In the best interest of the child," how that plays out in real life is very important and critical to all the parties involved. So speaking of which, I know you've had personal experience with your own children. Are you comfortable with talking a bit more about that now?
Yeah, sure.
So, okay, go ahead, please.
Well, I mean, I lost contact with my girls when they were 1 and 3 years old. So now they'll be turning 12 and 14 this year. So I've essentially lost their entire childhoods.
Right.
To that extent, there's not much that I can talk about when it comes to what the progression of loss has been, because it was like straight to no contact.
Wow.
Yeah, so unfortunately, there's not much that I can say in terms of updates related to them.
We understand. We want to offer our feelings of support in this area, and wish that things were different. Obviously, they weren't, and going forward, hopefully, the matter would be resolved amicably. Not only for yourselves but the other parties concerned. So, best of luck in this issue. I know your hands are tied to a certain extent, and you can't go beyond that. So, we appreciate what little you can share with us. So, if you could change two things tomorrow on these issues, what would they be?
The first thing is that I would standardize the presumption of 50-50 custody in the event of separation. The moment separation happens, it should immediately be a default of 50-50 custody. Now, that doesn't mean that has to be the only way. Parents can negotiate it, but that needs to be the default as far as the rights of the parents and as those rights relate to the rights of the child to have access to both parents. That would be my biggest wish in this whole system, more than anything else. The second wish would be that upon reunification, that there is actually a program for reunification that focuses on helping rehabilitate the family. And if portions of, resources were to go to that from other places, I think that would be extremely helpful because, earlier you had my friend, the guest, Randy Murphy over, and he had mentioned when they talk about domestic violence as it relates to custody, the first act of domestic violence can often be the separation of the child from one of their parents, because that is usually done through the law or through disappearance or, in ways that aren't just about safety. In the cases that I've seen most of the time, that has not seemed to bear out. Whether it's been in the United States or Europe or India, it seems like the weaponization of safety has been a real issue. And so I think what that does to a child's psyche as well is something that we need to look into more. So I wish that we could spend more time with that rehabilitative process.
Yeah, well, we would love to have you back at another episode. Due to time constraints, I know we can't get into too much details. But yeah, we look forward to hopefully another time with you and where you can expand a bit more on critical issues that you see the need to. So those 2 points that you raised in terms of what you would like to see change are critical and essential to everyone concerns well-being. So 50-50 default, I know in Canada that seems to be a pattern that's sort of taking place right now. And as you mentioned, based on individual cases, merit can play a part, and then you can stagger the percentage based on the overall situation of each case. So that's very important as well. So that's a very good couple of points that you raised there, and hopefully that's something that would be addressed effectively and shortly too. I know in the United States, some states I think adopt that and some don't. So that's something that needs to be spread far and wide so everybody can get the message. Moving to your book that is in the manuscript stage, and I wish you best of luck going forward with getting it published and whatnot. It's about family continuity, memory, and legacy. After a decade of moving through other people's countries, what did you learn about what home actually is?
Well, I think home is specific to people. Everyone has their own definition, but when you have your family broken apart, then home becomes, what your future family might look like when you restore it. I think, at least for me, so home for me is a future where there's a reunification and we can rebuild a connection, because for me, home is where people are. People are home to me. That's very different than jurisdiction games in the legal arenas, of course.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, so I think that's like the best way for me to think of home. And I think when I think about all the other people and their homes, I think it's usually places where they're safe.
Right.
Right. Safety is like the number one thing that, defines a home, I think, for people.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so would that be the hope for your kids as well as other kids in a similar situation?
Yeah, I think that number one that we have to deal with children is their safety, and, understanding that. And I think more than even love, a child first wants to know that they're safe. Then they want to know that they're loved. Then they want to know that they can be.
Right.
And we should look at it from that lens. And I think also that is why it's so important to heal, so that your child can see that and feel safe. I talked to several people after this great opportunity to speak with you today, some of my old friends and mentors. And I was like, hey, I have this great opportunity with this great organization that's promoting these types of dialogues. What are some things that, we should discuss, or what are things that you and I have had lessons from before? And we kept returning to the same theme, which I'd like to share with you, which is, I believe truly the best thing you can do for your child while you're separated is practice self-care.
Very
because
good.
The most healed version of you is going to be that version that your child responds to best.
Excellent point. Yeah, I agree with you. It's important to maintain that, or improve in certain cases, how you carry yourself, and that would be reflected in your dealings with your children going forward. So that's a critical issue that people should pay attention to. So now to a bit of a fun part where I'm looking for a one-word response to the following 5 questions. Number 1, what kept you going on the hardest day?
Love.
What do most people misunderstand about fathers and separation?
Choice.
What does hope feel like to you right now?
It's like the sun.
Right? What's the biggest lie men tell themselves in crisis?
It's fine.
It's fine. I've heard that a million times. What should every dad know before it's too late?
You never stop being a father. Sorry, that's more than one word, but
Yeah, but I got the message. So we'll take that. So we have one final question for you. But before we get to that, just some further information about our organization. Just some numbers I'm going to throw out at you here. Phone number is 226 289 8784. Info at voiceofmen360.org is our email, and our website is www.voiceofmen360.org. We're on all social media, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, you name it. And we are a little late today. We do encourage everyone to join us in whatever way possible. We have a YouTube channel. We're also on Facebook. Join with your comments, your likes, whatever, we welcome it all. And I do apologize. I missed in the beginning the disclaimer that we have for our organization. Sivam, if it's not too late, can you put that up? We would like to remind everyone that Voice of Men 360's mission is always delivered in good faith with the intent of peaceful harmony for all. The views and opinions shared by the participants are those of their own and do not necessarily reflect those of Voice of Men 360. Please know that our content is not a substitute for professional, medical, or therapeutic advice. If you're struggling with personal challenges, we strongly encourage you to reach out to a qualified expert. For questions or concerns about today's episode or any of our content, please feel free to email us at info@voiceofmen360.org. And back to Amit. Amit, we have one final question for you, which basically is, what contact information would you like to share with everyone out there who's tuned in?
I didn't really think about that. I guess you could email me if you want to stay in touch. The email has been displayed. That's a good place to start. I usually respond.
Okay, excellent. Well, it's been a pleasure having you on. I've learned quite a bit some of which I knew before, but some of which I didn't. And maybe the audience feel the same way. And, we've certainly been blessed with your presence and the knowledge you've imparted upon us today. We know you're dealing with certain very serious things that carry serious consequences and whatnot. And we wish you all the best with your upcoming book as well. So thanks again to you, Amit Lau, for being our guest today. We certainly appreciate your time and your presence. And to the audience, all of you out there, we again thank you for joining us today. This will be carried forward on YouTube, and you can always access it if you didn't have a chance to get to it today. So thanks again to everyone. Thanks to you, Amit Lau, and everyone out there. And have yourself a good day, good afternoon, good night, wherever you may be. Bye from all of us here at Voice of Men 360. Cheers.